How you doing? Thanks for joining me for this analysis video. We're looking at the wing position today. That will come very shortly. First of all, if you're in Sydney this week, there is a free come and try day at a clinic in Doonside on Tuesday, the 17th of January. And then the Aim Higher Roadshow kicks off in Sydney this week, but then also goes on to Queensland the following week. Logan, the 23rd of January, we start a 4-week block there. Capalaba, the 24th, we start a 4-week block there. Also, clubs out there until the end of January. I'm running an unlimited offer on rugbyleaguecoach.com.au subscriptions. One club has just purchased the 1-year package, which is $750. There's also a lifetime package there as well, which is maybe twice that price. And they've worked out that it costs them $20 per coach. They've got over 30 coaches. $20 per coach they've spent on them to develop them in 2023. They described it as a no-brainer. Anyway, enough of that. Let's get on with this analysis video now. Before we look at the video, I did say that I was going to look at the difference between Josh Addo-Carr and Daniel Tupou, because obviously that was the big conversation of 2022 vis-a-vis New South Wales origin. The problem is there's so many other wings that come into contention for that, including To'o and also Joseph Suaalii if he plays on a wing. So one thing I noticed when I was doing the edit of this tape, I wanted to isolate a few areas. I wanted to see how they return the ball, what they were like under the high ball, what their attacking shape was like. And also, especially because you asked for it on Facebook, the defensive positioning. So I've got loads of positioning things for you to see here. One thing that became apparent when I was looking at the video is that if I'm looking at one wing, well, of course, there's a wing opposite them. So both sides of the tape are often quite interesting. So unfortunately, when I go through this tape, I'm going to be bobbing between offense and defense quite a lot. And we're going to be looking at different wings. And I hope that you stay with me for that. Otherwise, I was trying to edit it and put it back into a section, or this section can be positioning. But of course, there were also some things on the other side of the ball that came into the equation. So please forgive me for that. Bear with me. But I'll share the screen and we will see how we go. The ball is with Australia in the semi-final. One of the reasons I picked this tape, right, is because I thought, if I was doing something between Josh Addo-Carr and Daniel Tupou, well, a lot of critics of Josh Addo-Carr said the World Cup was quite easy for him for most of the time. Well, I thought, I'll take this game because this was by far the easiest game for Josh Addo-Carr on the Australian side. So this is why I looked at this game. But what I found is that when I was watching it, there were so many other good things that happened for us to look at on both sides of the ball in New Zealand. Now, I've just paused the tape there. You can see the right wing of New Zealand dropping back. You can see he's turning round quite quickly to get back in defence. Now it's the fifth tackle, so he is really rushing to get in position for the kick. If anything, I'd say is a little bit late. And Ronaldo Mulitalo, my man on the left side, he's not even in the picture. But he manages to get in position reasonably well. And this is a good clip because it shows you how the back three operate in most teams. Now, I'm just waiting for a minute ago you could see Ronaldo's foot on the right wing. What teams often do is operate something called the pendulum. So when the kick is around the middle, the fullback tends to be the deepest and the two wings are in between. So we've got the right wing here. I think it's Rapana, isn't it? And then the left wing is Mulitalo, and he'll be almost in exactly the same position on the opposite side of the field. It's called a pendulum because if the ball was on the left and getting kicked from there, the winger would be up on that side, on the right wing, and the left wing would be further back, and the fullback would be further across near the play, and vice versa. And that's what happens all the time. So when the kick comes from the middle, they're actually quite equidistant. One thing you'll notice here is somebody else is coming to join the line too. This is because quite often teams like to look at opportunities to link on this very first play. Unfortunately, the fullback just takes it straight into the line like a prop and then unloads it. And then here's Rapana getting on the ball now. And this is obviously another element of returning the ball from the back, is that the wings tend to be the first people that carry them. So I'm going to start looking at the defensive side. We're looking at Josh Addo-Carr's positioning here. Because the ball is around the left side of the field, Val Holmes in this side won't be too far back. He isn't in the screen, But one of the beauties of moving back is that it's actually easier to move forward again if you've got it wrong, rather than try and backtrack if you've got it wrong. So he took a gamble there and ended up being in a good place. But you can see Josh Adokar at the top of the screen. He's dropped. Now, because of New Zealand's poor shape, it's actually quite a good decision for him, because it's not that obvious that they're going to shift, and if they do, it's not going to be the sweetest shift. Yes, they shifted, but look how quickly Josh Adokar gets to be in a defensive role. He didn't necessarily tackle anybody there. Well, he didn't tackle anyone, but he just did enough to put them off moving the ball, and he left the tackle to his inside. So I think Josh Adokar handled that quite well, and we're on the fifth tackle now again. Australia have the ball on the left side on the fifth tackle. Rapana's up. Hopefully, we will get to see some other elements. Yes, we do. That's the Pendulum in action. You'll see that Ronaldo Mulatalo was further back than Rapana, and the fullback Manu is also further across on the right. And because of that, Ronaldo was able to get to the ball. So we've had a little bit of discussion about the pendulum and positioning, but there's going to be even more clips that sort of prove that. Did you just see what Josh Adokar did there? Watch. So we've got the play. It's the fourth tackle. Watch Josh Adokar at the top of the screen. Bolting back. And we'll assume that it's going to be quite an equal distribution, fullback wings this time because of a central kick. And now Josh Adokar will catch the ball on the full. You may remember us talking last week about the fullback and the cradle. This is what I meant. Look at Josh Adokar's cradle. His elbows are quite close together. His body is under the ball and his eyes are very firmly on the ball. He was so comfortable catching it, he even did it on one knee. And he was under a lot of pressure there. He did not take his eyes off that ball. Watch. Watch again. His positioning was good. Didn't take his eyes off the ball. Great stuff. Another example of taking the high kick, the cradle again, Ronaldo. He didn't go down on a knee, but just watch how comfortable he was. Watch. Good positioning, very similar to Adokar, actually. He's under a bit of pressure. Cradle, takes it in, never takes his eyes off the ball, only looks at the defence once he's got the ball in his grasp. Excellent stuff from Ronaldo. The positioning here is interesting because even though the kick is a little bit to the right, Josh Adokar is quite deep. Now, I think if New Zealand were defending that ball, Rapana or Mulatalo would have been up a bit higher. Adokar's really deep. So that whole pendulum there is actually quite deep. So maybe that was a trick miss by New Zealand. They could have shifted the ball early to Adokar's edge on the last tackle and then kicked from there if they needed to, or kicked a bit shallower to test that three. So maybe a trick miss. But having looked at Tedesco's role last week about how we change things up, then you'll realise that it was probably hard for the kickers of the opposition to always judge where they'll be. Now, another thing I want you to start looking at now is attacking shape. Now, you'll see here that Val Holmes is basically hogging the touchline. The ball is potentially moving across to the right. On the left side, though, if Adokar is hogging the touchline, there's a big gap in between. So the field balance is a little bit off, and that is really interesting because some wings do something completely different. And I'll show you why soon. There's that gap between Adokar and his centre, and we've already seen Holmes tied to his sideline. Can you see Ronaldo Mulatalo, the left wing of New Zealand, is now dropping back a tiny bit, even though it's only the first tackle, but now they're defending on their goal line. And he just moves up in the line casually. There is a little bit of distance there in between the two defenders, centre and wing. So he's acknowledging the attacking shape of Val Holmes. And the ball goes to ground. So as we're looking through these tapes, I want you to think about attacking and defensive shape. So Val Holmes went to the touchline there. I think Ronaldo reciprocated. And one thing I want you to start getting in your head now as you're watching this is the placement of wings before they go into attack. And I guess the way, for those of you like cricket, Shane Warne, God rest his soul, one of the great things he did as a bowler was change his position on the crease all the time so that the trajectory of the ball came a different place. And I guess this is what wings do all the time. Sometimes they stand in and come from inside to out. Other times they go from outside to in. Sometimes they're dead set in the centre, and you'll see some differences as we go. Here's a clip where the pendulum for Australia is a little bit different. And you'll see that the right wing, Valentine Holmes, is really deep. And so is Addo-Carr. And if I'm Brad Fittler thinking about the Origin this year, maybe something like this might come into play. I don't know what he did. But he did some damn good things throughout the tournament, as we know. I mentioned earlier about having a sneaky look at attacking shape. Now, you saw how tight Val Holmes was to his wing. Look at Mulitalo on this wing. So the shape is coming from in to out. My guess is that they are trying to make the opposition guess all the time. I often coach for my wings to stay on the sideline as per Addo-Carr and Val Holmes. But it's becoming increasingly common now for wings to move into out like that. So we'll dissect that further. Back to the defensive side of the ball and Addo-Carr, this is a good sign again about how sometimes a wing has to readjust. As I said, I apologise that we're bobbing between attack and defence sometimes. It's just the nature of the beast. So it's the fourth tackle and they run the ball rather than kick it. And the fifth tackle's coming up and they run the ball rather than kick it. Now, Josh Addo-Carr has dropped a little bit back for a kick, but you'll see his body language now. See how he dashed in? Got straight back in the defensive line. And I guess that's the beauty of somebody like Josh Addo-Carr, is that he's that quick off the mark. If he gets it wrong, he can sprint right back into position. And he actually turned up for his defensive mark there. So that's a real important clip when it comes to positioning. And I guess it's always easier to, like I said, it's always easier to move forward if you've got it wrong than to move backwards if you've got it wrong. Okay, now another wing who comes into contention a lot is Daniel Tupou. And here he is playing for Tonga. And of course, he's up against Brian Toto on the other side. Now, let's have a look at how he caught that ball. Let's see if he brought the cradle in. Let's have a look. Look at that. There's your cradle. I mean, I guess his elbows could be a little bit further together, and I guess they will be. But look at the height he's generated there from that jump. This is one of the reasons he's such a successful wing. Because of his height, the height he can generate. And also when he returns the ball, because he's a big body. I mean, that carry didn't get great go forward there, but I'm going to show you a clip soon where he does. Now, again, we're going to bob back into the attacking shape question. On the right side, did you see the wing come into out? If you didn't, I'll show it again. Look how close he is there. Now, I would argue, and I struggle with this sometimes, and why wasn't he hogging his touchline? If he's hogging his touchline, look what happens with this ball when it comes over. If he's on his touchline now, he's got far more room to score a try, and the ball would have probably gone closer to him. Because on the left, Tupou's hogging the try line, and look at the outcome. Of course, another thing that a big winger is good for is catching a high ball to score a try. Yes, I've got Josh Addo-Carr's excellent try against New Zealand to show you very soon. But watch this from Daniel Tupou. It didn't come off, but he's done enough in the past, so we know he can do it. Brian Toto will be having nightmares about the height of Daniel Tupou there. Let's look again. He's kept his shape, and look at the height differential there in the high kick. And he got to the ball, he just fumbled it on the way down. And of course, Samoa scrambled really well. Here's another kick attempted by Australia for Josh Addo-Carr, very similar to what we've just seen with Tupou. And it wasn't even challenged by Addo-Carr because it came in a little bit earlier, so it was closer to Latrell. So again, I guess that's the importance of height. Back to the defensive positioning and offensive positioning. So this is Val Holmes here as part of what I would call a compressed Australian defensive line. His eyes are on the ball, but Ronaldo Mulitalo has kept wider shape. If he was coming into out, I don't think this could have happened. Watch. So he's not quite hogging the touchline, but he's close enough to it to make some kind of break. And I don't know if you remember watching this game, but there was a clear thought that New Zealand were on top because of things like that. Here's Josh Adokar returning the ball, manhandled quite easily by the opposition lock. So I guess that was a concern of Brad Fittler's about returning the ball. But in terms of scoring tries, Adokar's probably electric and lightning and whatnot, and brings a lot to the table in that sense. And this is what else somebody like Josh Adokar can bring to the table. Fifth tackle, the winger was up a little bit, and this is why your positioning is so important. Rabana, after that, was either up real far or really far deep. So last week I described the fullback role as a nuanced position. The wing isn't far behind it, is it? You think some of the community coaches out there put one of the weaker players out on the wing, or the less talented, let's call them, and they've actually got a lot to think about defensively. If they drop too far, the ball can be shifted. If they're on their own defending, they miss a tackle, there's nobody there to cover them. And then, of course, you've got those high balls that come at you sometimes, time after time after time. In terms of looking around the wings, Josh Adokar and Daniel Tupou, I can understand why Brad Fittler went with Tupou. Yes, Adokar brings some lightning quick attributes to the game and scores some sensational tries. But the reality is a big chunk of possession in rugby league is kick return. And Daniel Tupou is a heavy body that can bring the ball forward very well, almost like another forward. It has to be part of your overall strategy, whether you pick somebody like an Adokar, a To'o, or a Tupou. Remember, To'o's got great meters coming out of his own half too. I guess sometimes what comes into play is the height of the opposition wing, especially if you play in Origin. If the opposition wing, is going to be a big, tall person, then sometimes you're going to have to put somebody tall against them. So there's a lot that goes into it. So for all those who are really critical of Fittler about that decision, I can understand why he made it. What it's got to be is part of the overall strategy, i.e. how are they going to exit the ball? Is Tupou going to be part of the first two tackles as often as possible? Is he key to getting goal forward? If so, that's really important. The thing that Josh Adokar brings to the table is the way he bobs in field quite a lot and supports play, a bit like Tommy Turbo at fullback. So there's pros and cons to both, but I don't think if Adokar played and Tupou didn't, that necessarily Origin would have gone south this year. So south of the border, not south. So yeah, these are all the intricacies of it. Now, positionally, we've got the centres, the 5'8", and the scrum half, the half to finish. We'll have a week off it next week, travelling around a little bit, but get ready. We'll do it all again in a couple of weeks. Take care.